Breaker into the black. This is Long Haul Preacher, and I ain't going back.
Howdy all, and welcome to the Week 3 podcast for April 2020. Again, apologies if any noise gets into the podcast. I'm trying to do this in the sound booth this time and without the printer running, giving it a small rest. The video you are seeing on YouTube or Patreon is from this morning's printing of a headband to be made into a face shield and what they call a mask buckle, a plastic piece that can help keep the medical practitioner's elastic pulled up behind the ears for the all-day mask wearing they have to do lately. Please, if you get a chance, help with such efforts in your own community by sewing or 3D printing or even just driving the parts around from point A to point B, whatever you can do. And here in Colorado, you can make donations to your local efforts through makeforcovid.co. The link to which I have in the description of this podcast on SoundCloud, Patreon, YouTube, and of course, my webpage, longhaulpreacher.space. From my wife and I, with Dirt Nails Farms, Rohi Therapy, Whole Family Legal, and At His Feet, as well as little Freya, we'd like to thank all the men and women who have put their lives into overdrive in this fight, the doctors, nurses, and emergency responders. Freya's Gift, a proto-novel by Monty Long-Haul Preacher Pescador. Forward. This novel is a work in progress that has already been edited and re-edited many times, just over the first 2 chapters. Since this is my first attempt at anything like this, I am reading it to you in hopes of comments and criticisms to keep the process going. So please leave a comment, any comment, after hearing it, just so I know it has been heard. Thank you. Chapter 1. One Good Turn. Freya Ishiguro set the autopilot for the first jump point, checked scan for anything on the path, and released her helmet, finally allowing herself to cry, tears floating into the zero-G cabin. She had promised herself she wouldn't, but it was all too real now, flying home, or to what was accepted as home, too low in the Corel system. How could she explain to her father, a citizen, that she messed up her appointment to the Navy? It was not like it was her fault, at least as far as she was concerned. It was that stupid Cadet Simmons and her lies. Dad was right. The Navy was as much about politics as service, if not more so. Simmons had convinced the commander that the training accident had been entirely Freya's fault. Somehow. Not that it mattered. The result was Freya's drumming out and her flying back home. At least she had her dad's graduation gift, the 315P, to fly home in instead of taking transports. She thought it would just sit in a deep storage hangar. It still smelled new. The metal still sparkled, and the instrument panel looked almost untouched. Her helmet, hanging in midair, reflected the brilliant lights that lit up the little craft. It was built to be a frontline explorer, yet she had only flown it straight from the Ishiguro Corporation main headquarters to the Naval Academy, never once thinking of taking it out, even for leave. She took a deep breath to clear her head, wiped the tears away, and looked at a blinking communications alert. "This is Terra Patrol to unknown 315P, tracking you on automated flight plan. Please confirm identity and jump permission," came a familiar voice. Locking her helmet back into place, she called back, "Knock it off, Johnson. You know it's me." "Well, somebody has to keep you out of trouble," crowed her friend and former mentor, Captain Darius Johnson. His Gladiator flew over her in an inverted flight, allowing them to look up at each other. "Especially after you left so fast. Nobody would tell me a thing. How bad was it?" "Bad enough," Freya choked. "I'm booted and leaving, aren't I?" "You'll find your place in the universe," he called back, giving a thumbs up. "You're too good a pilot not to." "Like father, like daughter?" That's for him to tell you about, I told you. Freya sighed. Yes, sir. Dropping Q for jump point Tyrannus. Keep your head down and your aim true, Darius. Back at you, Freya. And I almost forgot. Remember this for later. 109er. What's that supposed to mean? No time to explain. Just remember. You're clear to jump. Patrol clear. He peeled neatly away to return to his trainees in formation, turning the group back the way they had come. Freya's gift clear, she automatically replied as the jump computer locked in. Goodbye, she thought to say too late, as the jump point consumed her, and she left the Terra system. Mark Ishiguro looked up at the red sky, hand sweeping away his long white hair from his face as he tried to peer through the haze of dawn. It felt like he had spent nearly 2 decades of his adult life only growing old, yet his fatherhood late in life had forced him to take better care of himself. If anything, Freya saved him from dying of old age sooner. But now, he just felt old. His bones creaked under the pull of normal gravity. Skin felt tight in the semi-arid breeze. And the stress. Unlike his father and his father before him, Mark never had a son to pass on the responsibility that came with citizenship, the family business in the military. And he never pushed Freya to join. He had instead received early approval of giving Freya citizenship based on the family history. Still, Freya joined anyway. And now she was headed home. Why? Mark sighed, kicking the hard pack of iron-rich soil under his feet, and turned back to the Biodome farms. He could have picked a more green and lush planet to establish his main home, but he liked the red mesas and dry desert floor. It reminded him of the old Western novels he had collected from scrap sales. He'd come back to base, to home, after hearing about Freya's debacle back in Terra System. As the old hauler's saying goes, news travels fast, and bad news travels even faster. His friends had all cheered throughout the UEE when another Ishiguro took to the Navy. So when such friends heard about the accident and inquiry, one sent out a carrier pigeon, a system-by-system message transmission, to find Mark, out on the edges of UEE space doing jump point prospecting. And Mark hitched a ride back. He would seriously owe the man later, but that was nothing new amongst the independent contractors he held as friends. Mark swung onto the Dragonfly and sped back to the hangars beside the biodomes, anticipating, as his calculating mind always did, the near exact time he would hear the 315P scream overhead. It was a talent that had saved him many times in the black, 10 times more in the Navy, a talent he had taught to his daughter. What happened? As he continued towards the hangar, the sound came, the 315P roaring into view. They shut down engines at the hangar almost at the same time. As the dust settled, Mark spat his mouth clear and dismounted, looking over to see Freya doing her post-flight checklist in the cockpit, just as he'd taught her. How could she have been the direct cause of an accident? She's always by the book. Sighing, he did a mechanical check on the outside before hooking a tug to the front to pull it into the hangar. Freya popped the hatch. So, she started tentatively. So, Mark grinned back. Good trip? Freya shrugged, climbing down. Not like shaking a Vandal surprise. Take it you heard, Mark nodded. Wasn't my fault. I know, kid, Mark whispered, hugging her tight. You're too careful for that. Politics? How'd you guess? I'm good that way. Mark motioned Freya over to the tug and continued. It's down the wire that a routine patrol somehow went haywire, and you were implicated. Want to set the record straight? Freya sighed. She knew this was coming, and still wasn't sure how to explain it. It was a simple stock patrol cadets are assigned to. You know the drill. Mark nodded, thinking back, as he started the tug pulling the fighter into the hangar. Standard pattern through a secured jump point to another UE system and back. Sub-Q only in system for clearest comms and scanner, right? Yeah, sighed Freya. But we never made it to the jump point. We followed the commander in a patrol formation, But just as we were approaching jump, the commander's ship, it just blew. The commander didn't survive. As second, I secured the area and waited for recall. But then, why are you home? Why did they give you the boot? The post-accident analysis somehow came back with something that never happened. According to the report, there were score marks on pieces of the Hornet debris, and some of my ammo was missing, as if fired. They put 2 and 2 together and claimed I'd fired, intentionally or accidentally, at the commander. Ah, in other words, someone more important was at fault, and they planted evidence to implicate you. Freya shrugged. An admiral's daughter did the maintenance inspection of the Hornet, but you always told me to never assume, and always seek truth. That's my girl. They parked and unhooked the 315P, leaving it to the mechanics in the hangar for post-travel inspection and maintenance. So, what next? Give it any thought? Freya sighed. As far away from Terra as possible. Mark tried and failed to stifle a chuckle. I think we can arrange that. Exploration or transport? It was a rhetorical question, and they both knew it, each giving the other a cocky grin, and answering the question at the same time. The Banu run. Do you even have enough in your final pay to upgrade the 315 to a racer? Mark nodded at the fighter, cocking an eyebrow. I'll earn it. Why not just start with the small racer rounds? Build up a reputation? Dad, you know I've wanted to do this since I was old enough to hold a stick. I'm just saying. I'll pay for it. You don't have to pay for a thing. They stood there for a moment staring at each other, a couple of mechanics watching the exchange and holding their breath. They were kids of Mark's top engineer, having grown up with the headstrong speedster, Freya, and helping her with her exploits. They had been disappointed when she went into the military, grudgingly and trudgingly going through their careers as the next generation of engineers for the company, not really wanting to go into the military or university for more training. Mark finally nodded. I could use a repair facility in Yulin anyway. He turned towards the young mechanics. So how about you renegades run a budget for a crucible and pass it by the board with my blessing? Not promising anything beyond that. I have no direct control over the board anymore since the stocks got mixed. Or at least so they tell me every meeting. A huge cheer rose up from the hangar, and Mark had to wonder if the older mechanics were cheering because of opportunity or because they knew they'd be rid of the younger mechanics. He walked towards the other two renegades. And you two, if I'm leaving my girl's life in your hands, you will finally start those distance learning classes I have been after you to get into and get your degrees in engineering, as I know you can. And you will start behaving and dressing accordingly for this job, or you will find yourselves unemployed. I have no room in this organization for people unwilling to grow. Sir, yes, sir, snapped the older Yellen, quickly adding a salute. Mark expected it of her. She and Freya had been the ones who took their dreams of racing to a highly disciplined level. Even after Freya had left for the Navy, Yellen had followed Freya's training and kept up a similar schedule in her own life. She was a solid rock of a woman. Her twin brother Selen absently added his own sloppy salute. Unlike her, he was absent-minded and always thinking of a new way to build something or make it better. Thankfully, this did not lead him to cutting corners. Unfortunately, it often led to simple repair jobs taking several days, and one time, months. As they walked back to the house, Freya finally asked, Dad, is this going to mess up our citizenship? What? No, he replied, looking shocked. I mean, so long as nobody uses it like that. There is no regulation that getting drummed out of the military automatically relieves you of citizenship. The only thing that does is directly breaking a major law that requires citizenship revocation or some politician forcing it upon you. I still have enough friends high enough in the Navy to make sure that doesn't happen. I've already put the word out. The entire matter is sealed. But didn't that cost you? Sure, Mark grinned. You're worth it. His comm chimed and he brought up the call to find himself looking at an admiral. Mark? The man nodded. Admiral? Mark was able to get out between his teeth. If an admiral he'd never met before was calling, it could not be good news. I wanted to call you personally with this one. I've heard that you wanted an incident sealed without even knowing what it was about. Well, the good news is that it is already sealed. You don't owe anyone anything for that. And the bad news, sir. The Admiral gave a sad grin. Smart man. Someone, and I do not know who yet, is trying exceptionally hard to unseal it. My end of this is secure. Is yours? Always, Admiral. But this piqued Mark's interest. As a CEO, Mark's comm was required to be encrypted, but it was his policy, even as a small enterprise, that all comm traffic within the organization needed to be encrypted. What was not known to anyone, however, was why. Mark suspected the Admiral knew. Freya took Mark's response as a clue and quietly backed away while keeping within hearing distance. By now your daughter may have told you the reigning rumor about the so-called accident, the Admiral's daughter. No, not mine. Worse, I'm afraid. The so-called Admiral's daughter was my agent, and I am convinced the accident was created to ferret her out and get her out of the way. Having been in ops before, you know that what goes on internally is more a matter of finding the problems than knowing and going after the guilty. My office may have stumbled onto something bigger than we believed going into it, but we are still not sure what it is. One thing that has come out of this. Now they, whomever they are, suspect that Cadet Ishiguro knows about whatever it is they are doing. If you don't mind, I would like to activate a couple of operatives within your organization to protect her and watch for more clues as to what's going on. Wait, operatives? In my... Admiral, what the heck? Sorry, Mark. I thought you'd have known. Anyone with a deep enough of an ops record and a tendency to travel to non-UEE sectors are tracked and monitored in case of a breach of security. The two I assigned to you wanted to stay with your company after it became clear you were not a threat. They were decommissioned. They are, however, very good at what they do and are the closest agents we have to you. Mark sighed. Once in the Navy. Look, Admiral, do what you like, but at this point I need to be part of the loop. You know there is only one way you can, Mr. Ishiguro. Mark looked at Freya. She shook her head, panic evident in her eyes. Mark keyed the recording function on the comm. Captain Marcus Falcone Ishiguro, requesting permission to return to active status. Intelligence Division. Effective immediately, sir. Permission denied, Captain. Mark blinked at the Admiral. Excuse me, sir? The record function blinked off, turned off from the other side of the communication. You will return to active status, but not on record. On record, your company's classified contract with the Navy has been officially extended, and privately will include intelligence trafficking, with you as the lead contact. With all due respect, Admiral, that is an order, Captain, unless you want to rescind your offer to return. Mark gritted his teeth. Once in the Navy. Captain. Mark. Look, I know this is difficult. I really do have a daughter, and she really is in the separate division of intelligence. That division is in charge of extra Navy operations. She lives as a civilian under an assumed name, and I only get to see her when she has to change identity. This is not an easy life for her or for me. As a father, I understand your frustration, especially at the knowledge that your daughter may have a target on her. If you want full access, this is the best I can do for you. The choice is yours. Either trust me to protect your daughter the best way I know how, or give up a few of your freedoms and come back to work for us, with all the risks and responsibilities that come with the title. Mark looked again at Freya. Again, she shook her head. Give me 24 hours and call back, Admiral. I need to talk to my daughter about it. Keep in mind, she will also be reinstated under these guidelines as her earned rank of second lieutenant, also under deep cover. It puts a target on you and your company as well as her in many ways if any of this gets out. Be careful. Understood, sir. 24 hours. He closed the comm and rubbed the stubble on his face. It'll mean having to keep a closer shave, I guess. Dad, this isn't a joking matter. No. Mark shook his head and sighed. No, it isn't. Why didn't you just say no? Because he's right about one thing, Mark sighed. We are a target, just on inference. And someone very powerful now has a foothold in the UEE Navy. That is unacceptable. I guess I never got around to telling you what I did. Freya cocked a grin. No, but now may be a good time. At first I was a fighter jockey, like I said, but I was a little too good, Mark grinned back. Or at least someone upstairs thought I was. I started getting orders for quick scouting missions, at first through uncharted jump points, what inspired me to go that route with the corporation, and then into known hostile territory. The more I learned, the higher my security grade was made, and before I knew it, I was an intelligence officer without being an intelligence officer. That was when I started thinking of retirement. Your mother and I fell in love on a ship I was on for some time. Then I got word that I was the last remaining genetic Ishiguro left to take over the company. That cinched it. We both retired. I changed my name before taking over the company and getting married. And we've been living like this ever since. That name I hear every so often, Mark Falcone. That was you. Mark nodded. Yep. Captain Mark Falcone, UEE Navy Intelligence retired. Or soon to be unretired. You don't have to do this. My last posting was trying to ferret out smugglers from one of the carriers. It was an ideal op. Fighter jockeys are always looking for bootleg or smuggled things we can't get from ship stores, and often get ourselves dirty in the process. As one of the top fighters in the Union, I got myself close, but was pretty sure by the end that the smugglers had transferred off. I filed my report and retired. I have to do this, honey bunches, Mark returned with a sad grin. Even more than the thought of the Navy being infiltrated by someone capable of murder, you mean everything to me. You were our gift from God when all seemed the darkest in our lives. Well then, Freya grinned, doing this with you is the least I can do in return. Lieutenant Freya Ishiguro reporting for duty. She snapped a smart salute and Mark responded in kind. But the Admiral doesn't need to know until tomorrow. Let's go eat and catch up. Like, whatever happened to that boy that was chasing after you during flight training? Freya laughed. He couldn't keep up. Okay, y'all, this has been a podcast by Monty Long Haul Preacher Pescador, copyright 2020, at his feet, PBC, doing business as Long Haul Preacher, all rights reserved. That's legalese for drop me a line if you're going to use this stuff somewhere else. Just email me at info@longhaulpreacher.space for permission. If you like what you hear, please like in YouTube or Patreon or SoundCloud. If you really like what you hear, please subscribe on YouTube in particular. I can't make the pennies on a dollar that YouTube has for ads without a much higher viewer base. And sometimes the only offering we can give is the work of our hands. If you'd rather send money, you can do that for as little as $1 a month through Patreon by becoming a patron. Until the crowdfunding campaign for a virtual church has started, all funding I see through Patreon or YouTube is going in that direction. Not to any new equipment, at least not yet, and never has it been ever earmarked for me personally. The ministry comes first and always will. I will always be, as politicians love to say, transparent. Only, I really mean it, he says during an election year. In fact, You can look up Dirt and Nails Farms on Facebook, and there is a virtual board meeting currently going on right now about the virtual church if you are interested in peeking in, if not asking to join the board. Sorry, the website is once again down and appears to be under attack in 2020. I don't know when it'll be back. Until next time, love your family, be safe, and do what you can for your neighbor in truth and in action in Jesus' name. God bless.